Chapter 3 Adamantine. Adamantine. Adjective. 1. Unyielding or firm in attitude or opinion. 2. Unbreakable. Shota was by no means a forgiving teacher. In his younger years, he might have even taken some pride in his reputation of ruthless pragmatism. Tough love worked, no matter what Netsu told him. Students either made it or didn't. Shota didn't have the time or patience to hand-feed whatever entitled brat came his way. People who were years Midoriya's senior had succumbed to his training. In all honesty, Shota had been ready to humor the kid for a few hours, talk him down from some whining, or God forbid, crying, and send him on his merry way. Precocious or not, Midoriya was probably aiming way too high, way too early, and Shota was probably the unlucky bastard who had to let him down easy. Whatever. No matter how harsh he wasn't going to crush Midoriya's dreams right off the bat. Way too much trouble. Besides, it would be far easier to prove the boy's shortcomings and let him quit on his own. Hisashi would have called him soft for that. Shota preferred the term practical, not that anyone would have believed him. A day into training, and Shota found his new student surprisingly adequate. Hisashi's voice, boisterous with laughter. Adequate, Shota? Then you must have been pretty damn impressed. Hisashi could piss off, but he'd been right, for once, because what Midoriya lacked in physical ability, he made up for in sheer tenacity. Shota had thrown everything he could at Midoriya in his first day, because he didn't believe in any sort of coddling. God knew Yue wouldn't afford him the mercy, and he didn't believe in giving children false hope. After a brutal day of running, bench presses, sit-ups, and all-around physical hell, Midoriya had staggered up to him, and Shota had waited for tearful apologies, some plea to back out, lay off, slow down. Instead, the damn kid had flashed him a bright, exhausted smile. Thanks, Aizawa-sensei. Same time tomorrow? After a beat of stunned silence, Shota had allowed him a wide, feral grin. That, far beyond any fanciful quirk, was something Shota could work with. In hindsight, Shota should have seen it coming. The kid trained like a machine. Food and water seemed like a distraction to him. Breaks were a waste of precious training time. Cuts and bruises were brushed off with a stubborn nonchalance. Izuku clearly possessed all the self-preservation skills of a fucking lemming. And now Shota had an armful of unconscious Midoriya and was rapidly running out of options. He swept his gaze over the boy. No bleeding, no bruises, and Shota had forced food and drink into him a scant hour ago, but his face held an unhealthy pallor, and the dark bags under his eyes were stark against his skin. Probably exhaustion, then. The boy needed to go home to rest. It seemed a good time as any to note that Shota hadn't the faintest clue where Midoriya's house was. A few taps on the boy's cheek didn't even elicit a response. That left asking for directions out of the question, and he wasn't going to leave Midoriya lying in the park, which left him the most uncomfortable option. Sighing, he hoisted Midoriya into a comfortable bridle carry, and began the slow trek out of the park, grumbling all the way. Honestly, the boy almost reminded him of a certain other idiot he knew. Izuku wakes up in a panic. Bitter ash on his tongue, feels the blood slicking his skin, and there is only danger need to get out. An unfamiliar voice, rough in the haze, and the adrenaline only spikes, rushing and urgent. Izuku snaps towards them, gaze flicking wildly about, unseeing, searching for danger, danger, danger. Midoriya-kun. His gaze snaps towards the sound, but he can't draw breath, air whistling in and out of his lungs fruitlessly. He can't breathe, he's going to die, drowning on land. Midoriya-kun, listen to me. You aren't going to die. Just follow me. In for 7. Out for 11. In for 7. Izuku gasps for the air like a dying man, trying desperately to follow the voice, and his vision mercifully clears. He blinks the blur out of his eyes, and Aizawa-sensei swims into view, worry gathered in the pinch of his brow. You alright, kid? Izuku takes stock. His cheeks are wet with tears, his nose runny, and his throat feels raw. His body aches with exhaustion, like he's just run a marathon. Tiredness weighing his bones and weakness seeping through his muscles. He feels horrible. Nothing out of the ordinary, then. Izuku musters a weak smile in Aizawa's direction. I'm good, sensei. Aizawa quirks an eyebrow disbelievingly, but Izuku pretends not to notice in favor of looking around him. He's sitting on a worn couch in an apartment? Izuku's confusion must show on his face, because Aizawa huffs. You fainted. I brought you back to my place. Realization is a hot flash of pure mortification. He fainted, and made Aizawa carry him to his house and had a panic attack, and Izuku almost topples over in his haste to scramble off the couch, apologies already tripping off his tongue in a tangled rush. Oh my god, I'm so sorry for bothering you. I'm just gonna go back to train now, okay, bye? He barely has a hand on the door before a length of white cloth is unceremoniously wheeling him back to the couch. Rest. Training's over. What? But Aizawa-sensei. The man thrust a steaming mug into Izuku's face, startling him to silence. No buts. Drink this and go home. He opens his mouth to protest, because he's fine, but Aizawa pins him with a dry look. Save it. We're not doing any more training today. That's probably as far as he's going to get on that subject. So, Izuku settles for taking the mug with a soft thank you. He curls his palms around the chipped ceramic. The warmth that seeps in settles him, somewhat. He takes a sip and lets his eyes travel around the room, trying to quell the lingering anxiety fizzing in his gut. 3 exits, a nearby window, a door to the kitchen, and the front door. Nothing sharp or particularly deadly, but that table lamp over there could do as a club in a pinch, or the mug in his hands could be thrown, broken to form a makeshift tool. Midoriya. The sound jerks Izuku out of his thoughts, and he flushes quietly at his paranoia. Nervous habits, left over from wartime. Get it together and stop looking like a caged animal, Izuku. Thankfully, Aizawa didn't seem to notice. The man leans forward from his seat on a nearby armchair, dark eyes inscrutable. You have nightmares. Izuku fixes his gaze on his mug and watches a delicate curl of steam rise, determinedly avoiding Aizawa's piercing gaze. Yes. That leads to panic attacks. Yes, sensei. Haven't been able to sleep? No, sensei. Want to talk about it? Izuku looks up in surprise. Aizawa hasn't moved, but he looks distinctly awkward. A slight grimace about the line of his mouth. And to Izuku's horror, the sight of it startles a laugh out of him. It goes on for far too long, his awkwardness strung out into a few nervous, high-pitched giggles that peter out into a deeply uncomfortable silence. Aizawa's staring at him oddly, and Izuku wants the ground to come up and swallow him. Aizawa sighs. No need to laugh that hard. The tension dissipates, and Izuku ducks his head awkwardly, grateful for the save. Sorry, sensei. He downs the rest of his tea in for the lack of anything better to do. After that, he'd rather avoid conversation than combust in self-embarrassment again. Thank you very much. Besides, staying would lead to more well-meaning, unanswerable questions. It was probably better to leave as soon as possible. He stands up and gives Aizawa a bow. Thank you for the tea and the help, Sensei. Aizawa waves it off. Whatever, kid. See you next week. Izuku frowns. Aizawa sees the question on his face and beats him to the answer. I'll train you 5 days a week, 7 to 10 at night. You started on Monday. Today's Friday, so... He flicks his hand. Shoo, kid. Izuku hides a smile as he makes his way to the door. It's the first time Aizawa-sensei has mentioned anything about long-term training beyond tomorrow, same times, same place. And Midoriya-kun? He pauses by the door. Yes, sensei? Aizawa's not looking at him, but there's something like concern pinching the corners of his eyes. Take care of yourself. Those eye bags better be smaller the next time I see you. His tone is blithe, but his clear worry makes Izuku beam. Okay, sensei, don't worry about me. I'm not worried, Aizawa deadpans. Just get some sleep, brat. You're no use to me dead on your feet. I will, sensei. Izuku calls over his shoulder. He pushes the door open, shuts it behind him, and carries his smile into the dusk. And because Izuku is a lying liar who lies, he most decidedly does not get more sleep. He'll sleep tomorrow, probably, but for now, there are more important things to tend to, like finding his hidden eye contacts and dragging a dusty can of hairspray out from under his bed. Things to do, villain organizations to topple, and all that. And in the dead of night, Izuku tugs the hood of his cloak over his head and steps out of his apartment block, disappearing into the shadows. He's got a bar to visit. He's the only one there, save Kurogiri. Izuku slides into a seat discreetly, and he looks up from polishing a glass. Welcome. May I interest you in a drink? Wordlessly, Izuku holds out a hand. Kurogiri tuts, but he produces a manila folder and slides it over the counter. It's rude to refuse a drink from the bartender, you know, Kurogiri chides. Izuku hums distractedly, flipping quickly through the contents of the folder. He finds identification documents, a passport, driver's license, education certifications, and medical records for a man named Sato Masashi. He's holding a person's entire life in his hands, and a fairly remarkable one, at that. 31 years old, studied at a local university, currently unemployed, no remaining family, confirmed quirkless at the age of 5. A forgettable name, a generic face in the crowd, except for one thing. A hospital record noted that Sato had suffered an accident in his later years that had culminated in severe scarring to his lower face, a detail that had gone, regrettably, unupdated in his legal documents. It certainly needed to be changed to the correct face as soon as possible. That folder cost us a pretty penny, Kurogiri muses. I don't suppose you'll tell me what it's for? Izuku meets his eyes with a vague smile. Recruitment. The folder is almost perfect, save one minor thing. Sato Masashi does not exist. Yet. A hero, a serial killer, and a boy walk into a bar. There is no punchline, because Izuku doesn't believe in tempting fate more than he already has. The hero, Takahashi Sora, alias Rogue Wave, 20 years old, has already downed a mug of beer within seconds of entering. The amber liquid in his mug follows the casual flick of his fingers. a quirk named Tidal, water manipulation, can control up to 100 liters of most liquids. As he sweeps arrogant eyes over the bar, leering at disgusted women, riding on family fame, shirking patrol duty for alcohol and sex. Izuku tracks wary eyes over the hero's figure as he turns the rest of his information over. Recently involved in multiple sexual assault scandals, victims claim they were threatened with his quirk. Takahashi denies all charges, but his family's lawyers have already begun to cover his tracks. The most he risks is a fine and a slap on the wrist. A pervert at best, a rapist at worst. Takahashi is the kind of person that makes Izuku want to punch his lights out. No time for that now, though. For now, his target is already settling himself in an unobtrusive corner, quiet and unnoticed in the dark. His blades and distinctive scarf are shrouded in the darkness of his cloak. He almost looks normal, except for his eyes, fixed intently on the hero, coolly assessing. A predator stalking its kill. Instead of fear, though, Izuku has to grit his teeth against a swell of anger, swallow down the souring distaste on his tongue. Sorry, Tenya. He draws up his sunniest, most harmless smile, and drags up a chair to Stain's table, directly opposite the man. Stain barely acknowledges Izuku, flipping him a vaguely disdainful look from the corner of his eye, his head turned away from him. Table's taken. Izuku grins wider, keeps his tone light. Shame. I thought you'd like some help, Stain. To his credit, Stain doesn't flinch at his words, but the line of his shoulders tense sharply as he snaps his gaze to meet Izuku's. He doesn't frown, doesn't give away anything, but there's a new wariness in the way his eyes dart about Izuku's face. It's 6 years in the past, and Stain hasn't even been identified, much less arrested. Right now, Izuku's the only other person alive who knows Stain's face, and that knowledge is probably frightening. The man's voice is a rough, dangerous growl when he speaks. How do you know my name? Izuku tilts his head, his smile sweet with hidden venom. It's my job to know things, Akaguro-san. Stain jerks back minutely at the name, his eyes glowing white with shock. How? Not the point, Izuku dismisses. He meets Stain's eyes evenly, and he's almost surprised at the wild shadow of fear in them. But it's to be expected. After all, this Stain is younger, less experienced, more fearful, and easier to convince. My name is Deku, and I'm here on the behalf of the League of Villains. I want to hire you. That rankled something in Stain, and the anger momentarily blinds his shock. I'm not for hire, he bites out, teeth bared in a snarl. I call the corrupt for the betterment of society, and I despise needless bloodshed. Find someone else to do your dirty work. Izuku remembers a hospital room at night. Tenya sitting hunched, sleepless, pale and wan in the dim moonlight. Izuku slips off his own hospital bed and approaches Tenya slowly, settling gingerly next to him. Tenya doesn't say anything, but the tension lightens somewhat. They sit in silence until Tenya speaks, hoarse. I asked Stain why he crippled my brother. Izuku tilts his head, tentative, a silent cue to continue. Tenya's voice trembled. He said he did it to spread rumors. His face twists in a cold rage. Tensei, the best hero I've known. His voice breaks, caught on the jagged edge of tears, was fodder for his rumors. The anger dissipates as quickly as it comes, and it gives way to sadness, immeasurable grief. I don't understand. A sob tears its way free, and the dam breaks. Tenya curls up, pushing up his glasses to scrub at his face. Tensei, never. He didn't do anything wrong. He helped people, inspired them, led others. He's a true hero. He didn't deserve it, so why? Another sob cuts him off, and Izuku throws caution to the wind and hugs him, as tight as Tenya's sling and his battered arms allow him to. Tenya leans into Izuku, burying his muffled sobs into his shoulder, and Izuku hurts for him. I can't, Tenya gasps. Can't do anything to help him, and we arrested Stain, but Tensei's still paralyzed. It hurts him so much to not be in Genium, but there's nothing else. It's so unfair. Tenya cries, and Izuku's heart clenches at the sheer helplessness in his voice, aches with bitter frustration. Izuku blinks the memory away, but for a brief, wild moment, he hates Stain in every single bit of his hypocrisy. Needless bloodshed? You've already accomplished that on your own, Akaguru-san. Izuku can't keep the sardonic edge from his voice. A darker, quiet part of him delights in the sudden uncertainty of Stain's face. With quick efficiency, Izuku produces a stack of papers. You've killed 6 heroes, crippled 9, he states blandly, fighting to keep his voice even. 5 of those are innocent. Stain opens his mouth, affronted, and Izuku cuts him off with an impatient wave of his hand. He fans out the documents, tapping a finger on a photo of a young woman. Kitagawa Tokuko, 21 years old, alias Skin Shifter. She was found dead in a deserted alley with multiple stab wounds to the chest. Stain frowns. She was a lying poser, he spits out. She let bystanders die in villain fights, barely acknowledged the innocent blood she spilled with every rescue she conducted. She was unworthy to even bear the title of hero. She was legally tied to a corrupt agency. From what I've gathered, Kitagawa-san was the only formally trained hero they managed to trick into their contract, Izuku says. He helpfully angles the document in question towards Stain. They provided money for her education in exchange for a minimum of 10 years of her employment, complete control of her image, non-disclosure, large debts to pay off, and etc. Get to the point, Stain interrupts brusquely. The point, Izuku emphasizes, is that the agency used her to get government funding, proceeded to cut rescue manpower to save costs, nobody to hurt away bystanders, and nobody to limit collateral damage, so people died. Izuku's gaze falls to the young woman in the photograph. Even the faded inks of his overworked printer couldn't hide her brilliant smile. A heavy weight settles in his gut as he brushes a thumb over the photograph. The agency swept their sloppy rescues under the rug, and what they couldn't hide, they blamed on her, and she couldn't do anything about it. Stain bristles at the silent accusation. That doesn't matter. If she was a true hero, a real one, she would have saved people at all costs. She was a hero, not a god. What more could she have done? Izuku swallows his protest in the rising anger, spreading his hands in surrender. Look, all I'm saying is, out of these 5 people, 2 were under bad hero agencies, 2 were interns following orders, and another was framed. You hurt innocent people. Judging by Stain's skeptical scowl, it was clear Izuku wasn't going to get very far on the supposed innocence of his victims. Fine, it was time to change tactics. You don't make many changes for your so-called betterment of society either, Izuku remarks. Remember Eagle, that winged hero? Stain narrows his eyes.
The one that fabricated crimes for himself to solve for fame and fortune?
The one you killed? Yes. Izuku responds. He hands him a printout of a blog page. The general public believes reports of his actions were slander. He still has fans fawning over him in his memorial blog. Izuku watches as Stain skims over the printout, taking in the praise, the condolences, the talk of building a statue in memoriam of a great hero. Never mind the fact that he had put hundreds of lives in danger in his greed. His knuckles whiten as he reads, crumpling the paper, his eyes furious.
That scumbag was the lowest of the low,
he hisses.
He put lives in danger for his meaningless charades, let innocents bleed for his selfish delusions of glory, tricked people into rewarding him for his crimes, and he gets honored for it?
Unfortunately, that's what happens when you kill people over crimes you have no evidence for, Izuku retorts dryly. They become fallen heroes. Their crimes go unproven, and you become the villain. A flicker of bitterness flashes across Stain's face. Good. He had a sore spot. He meets Stain's eyes with as much earnestness he can muster. Which is where I come in. He barrels through Stain's obvious trepidation and continues. I can help you research your targets, so you don't waste your energy on blameless people. I can give you the information you need to kill them. Things like habits, routines, weaknesses. I can incriminate your targets in the eyes of the public. He makes steady eye contact with Stain. I can even offer you this. He hands Stain a manila folder, the records of Sato Musashi. He watches as Stain pages through it, eyebrows lifting higher and higher as he reads. Stain wasn't a fool. He would recognize the sheaf of documents as something far more useful. A new identity, a perfect, legal cover from the authorities, and a way to leave the country without suspicion. A safe way out, should need arise, practically offered on a silver platter.
How do I know your information isn't full of crap?
Stain demands, and Izuku almost rolls his eyes at the token protest. Well, I found you, didn't I, Akaguro-san? Izuku stresses, and the man tilts his head in wordless acknowledgement, considering. Izuku can almost see the moment he relents. Stain looks up, his eyes guarded.
What do you want in return?
Jackpot. Izuku gives him a sharp grin. What I just said just now, Akaguro-san. I want you to work on the behalf of the League, and target only the people I tell you to. Stain releases his eyebrows skeptically.
What's the catch?
Don't kill your targets.
You want me to let the unworthy, sin-ridden scum of our society walk free?
Stain looks almost ready to hold one of his blades to Izuku's throat for the sheer insult. Izuku lets some steel color his tone. No, the League can't afford to be attributed to any direct kills. I want you to make them disappear for a few days, rough them up, and intern them. Threatening them to admit to their crimes will be helpful, if you can manage it. Izuku thinks, running over his plans, and adds, and tell them you work for the League. I'll handle the rest. The man's brows furrows.
Waste of time.
Izuku shrugs, feigning nonchalance. It'll breed paranoia and remove a few heroes. 2 birds, 1 stone. He leans back, crossing his arms, a picture of self-assurance. So, do we have a deal, Akaguro-san? Stain sizes him up, frowning, before his gaze catches on the manila folder. Its contents sitting innocuously on the table. His answer is obvious.
Deal.
Izuku lets a smile of cold satisfaction slide across his face. He gives Stain another burner phone, a cheaply bought mobile. I'll use this to contact you. As for your next target. He turns to check behind his shoulder. Ah, and Takahashi's already passed out. The handle of an empty beer mug curled in a loose fist even in slumber. Izuku looks back at Stain, a dangerously benign smile on his face, and jerks a thumb at the hero. You can start with him. Stain grins, full of teeth, and it twists his face into something darkly sinister. A monster in human form.
Pleasure doing business with you, Deku.